Hey guys, I am here with Steve Mandell, a man who probably needs no introduction, but he is the CEO of Gameplan Entertainment. He's a master negotiator, an entertainment lawyer, branding and marketing specialist. He's just an all-around amazing guy, part of our Do Deals network. He comes on the founders group quite a bit. Steve, did I do you justice?
I'm not so sure. Add some more superlatives. I'm kind of like enjoying this. In fact, let's change this interview to you. Just go, go, go. You did a good job.
I mean, yeah, no, I'm joking. I'm really excited to talk to you today. I think there's so many things that we can touch upon today that I just wanted to pick your brain about it. And so the first thing I really want to touch is I think as entrepreneurs, right, we get so involved and so excited about the things that we're learning about. Sometimes it's like drinking from a fire hose, and there's just all of this information. It can get super overwhelming. And so I'm wondering, what do you think people should do to sort of like stay out of the weeds more or less and keep their focus?
Number one, it's easy to get caught up in the noise. Okay. I mean, literally between everything we get on Instagram, everything on social media, from Twitter on down, right?
Yeah.
To Facebook meetups, Google meetups. I mean, every aspect of that. Then all the newsletters and all the informational sites and all the courses and all the webinars and all the seminars and all the blah, blah. Yes, it's like the fire hose, right? So you've got to say to yourself, you have to prioritize and say, look, really who and what do I want to do? And conquer incremental opportunities one at a time. Don't try and tackle everything. I happen to be a multitasker, but it took me years to get there. Sometimes you still find yourself in a situation where you're still kind of like really wanting to sort out and sample lots of different things. I must stress to people when I coach people around the world, you got to focus. Have incremental wins. Look at one game at a time like an athlete. Win that game, move to the next game, because you need to be an expert in those particular spaces. In my world of 30 years of being a lawyer and whatnot, I've had to become an expert in so many things because that's been my world, right? But I've been trained to, and I have been really out there kind of as a multitasker, having to absorb so much information. So I do that because I advise people all day long, but in terms of the business deal they get involved in, it's because I feel very comfortable in my space, right? So it's not going to happen overnight. It's just, you can't learn, to become a wrestling champion, you can't learn all the moves in one day, right? It's going to take time. It's a buildup. And I've done karate for years, same thing. You can't be a black belt tomorrow. You have to learn incrementally. So one day you're there, I can absorb so much better because I've been there and I've tried and I've done all this stuff. So focus is key. It takes a lot of emotional discipline to get there. But if you write out, and I think it's important, right? Get a whiteboard, write out your goals and stick to it. No matter how much you want to be tempted to go in these other directions, tell yourself, I've got to win this first game. And then all the other games are a little easier to come by and to win.
Well, look at that. I mean, I think we're done. No, I'm joking. That was a great answer. I think the other thing too is that people get so eager to get into things and want to be an expert, immediately. And obviously we can't do that. And I know JT says, act as if, and there's that old adage, fake it till you make it, which I know he hates. But like, how does somebody start to build credibility and a brand for themselves when they really don't have the experience, but want to start putting themselves out there?
Don't fake it till you make it. The truth of the matter here is I think that being real in my world has always been great, right? Just be honest. I had a meeting today and somebody gave me an acronym for something, an FPC, whatever it was. And I said, what does that mean? So you don't know? I'm like, no, I don't know. It doesn't make me stupid. I had confidence in saying I don't know, but now I won't forget from that. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yep.
My point is, you can have a certain amount of confidence to portray to other people without looking like a know-it-all or faking it, because you'll be able to see a faker right off the bat. You could tell when someone doesn't know a topic, right?
Yeah.
And so you lose credibility and people don't want to deal with you. So it's easier to go in and say, look, I'm an expert in what I do. I'm kind of a novice in this area, but I'm really looking to learn. People like the fact that you're unarming yourself and like you're going in there and saying, look, I'm willing to learn and I'm human. What person knows everything? They don't. There's no way to know everything. And I love to absorb information. As a side note, I love to watch documentaries about everything. I just enjoy it. I love the reality of what's happening in the world from antiquities, right? And just so I'm always learning. Could I possibly know how to speak Chinese tomorrow? No, because I don't speak Chinese, right? But would I like to learn how to speak Chinese? Yes. So I'm not going to get it right, right? Sometimes So my point too is everything's a language. If you think about it, treat everything as like a new language. It's okay to say to somebody, I don't know how to say spaghetti in your language. So it's okay to show somebody you're learning. It doesn't make you dumb. It doesn't make you vulnerable. But when you fake it, when you're talking to somebody that really knows what they're doing, you lose credibility by faking it. Don't fake it. So point is, learn as much as you can, read as much as you can, get mentors around you, and investigate, Google, do whatever you need to do, and then ask for questions along the way. You'll learn. You'll be an expert soon enough. Don't jam it down somebody's throat that you're an expert when they could tell you're not.
Absolutely. Do you
Are we
think
done now? I don't know if that answered also the second one.
No, it did. No, I think, yeah, I mean, is there, because the market shift hasn't necessarily happened yet, but I mean, it's probably going to happen at some point. Do you think there's anything that people could be doing right now to just sort of start maybe building that brand for themselves, even if they don't have a ton of experience, since it hasn't quite happened yet?
The brand and what though? We have to be specific, right?
Well,
So
okay, yeah.
yeah,
I
so
mean,
let's take it two ways, right? Brand in general, and then brand, let's say in real estate, right? So
Okay.
let's talk about those two things. Number one, start building a brand. Brand is about connecting to people, being on LinkedIn, being in groups, being in JT's all his founders meetings, and finding yourself in a place where you could share ideas and grow and build a brand for yourself, right? Get an identity. It's easy to get a website. It's easy to try and research. It's easy to go out there and create your identity that you want to have for yourself, regardless of the particular business you're in. If we're specifically focusing on real estate,
Yeah.
listen, you got real estate agents that are hungry as heck to try and find you a good property.
Mhm.
You can find one local real estate agent in your market. I talk to people about that all the time and say, look, help me out here. I got some money, I got some cash, or I have a bank that might back me up. They're perfectly willing to help you and learn and market and understand what's out there right now. Ask questions between asking questions of a real estate agent and a banker and finding maybe one other mentor who's bought and sold some properties once in a while. You can learn 80% of that stuff from there, right? Can't
Yes.
learn all the nuances. And then when you get a good attorney, when you're doing a transaction, attorneys in the real estate space, they've seen every problem there's ever been, because we want to avoid problems. That's what we want to avoid, right? We want to avoid downside. And so brand building, I'm always brand building. It doesn't matter whether the economy is great or bad or not. It's always about building your brand. Brand comes from credibility first, right? People always talk about this cliche about building a brand. What's your brand? Brand is honesty and integrity and a good business person first. And then you find your pockets where you want to bring that credibility. And that's how you become an expert in those particular spaces. So I find myself researching a lot in areas I don't know or I do know and want to know more. And I don't mind asking people questions and saying, what does that mean? And why are we doing this?
Okay.
I'm a sponge. And when I've been at Mega Success, you've heard me probably say in front of 3,000 people, or
Yeah.
JT might say a lot more, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000, whoever comes. It's, but I've said, look, guys, I'm a sponge. Sometimes people want to give me credit for being an expert or this or that. It took me years of being a sponge. I worked with great attorneys early in my career who knew how to write contracts much better than me. When I got to law school, how did I really know how to write a contract freehand? I didn't. Now I do, because I absorbed and I was a sponge and I listened and I researched. So it's all about believing in yourself and not being afraid to learn and not being afraid to get knocked down. You got to be able to get up.
Yes. And so that was awesome. And I think you're right about that. And you try until, right? You just keep going.
Don't fake until, try until.
Yeah, right. So one of the things, obviously, for us in Minnesota, we're in lockdown again. And so thinking about what our advertising looks like, right? Obviously, digital marketing and advertising has sort of become the hub of everything, because that's really all we can kind of do at the moment. So, what do you think people should really be focusing on? Should it be, like paid media, owned media, earned media? What do you think are the best things that people could be focusing on right now to kind of put themselves out there?
Okay. I think number one, you got to decide how you want to put yourself out there, because once you put yourself out there, you're going to be judged by what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So you don't want to look like you are all over the map. So make sure that when you get out there in whatever way possible you're doing it, it's just like a brand. Okay. If I've got the best brand in a particular, soap dish, right? Or I want to have the best soap dish in the world because there's so many things. I don't want to mix the messages with other things, right? I'm a soap dish, but I'm also a dispenser, and I'm also this, I'm also that. And I know may not be a good analogy, but just taking me, for example, right? I like to make sure people know exactly what I do. I'm an attorney. I'm an entrepreneur. I work with celebrities in the space and negotiate a lot of contracts, and I get deals done. I'm there. You follow me? Yeah. I'm not an expert in pharmaceuticals, although I enjoy that area and its expertise. I'm not an expert necessarily in a lot of things, but it doesn't mean I don't get involved with that. But I do know one thing. I tell people if there's nothing, I'm always 1 degree of separation from something if I don't know what the answer is. Getting your brand out there and whatever you're going to do can't be a mixed message over the course of time. It's got to be really focused on what you're doing, okay? Making sure that you're getting your points across that you want to get across. And if you have to have a really good plan that's going to help serve you better over the course of time, that includes not only digital, but certainly the right PR, maybe a PR agent to get your story out there in the correct way, and have somebody help shape your brand and your image. Because sometimes you can't see what that is clearly. You might need a mentor or somebody in PR to say, I think I got your message. That's the most important thing. It's the best money well spent with somebody that is a great content producer to say, I know what you're trying to do. And when I mentor people, they ask me, what's your image? And I've helped out several people in some of the calls I've done in coaching to say, I think this is your image. And they go, I didn't see it that way. I'm like, because you're so absorbed in it. You're too immersed in it and you don't see through it. Right. But keep it simple, keep it to the point, and keep it honest.
There you go. I mean, yeah. So now that you've done this, right, you've put yourself out there, you've got, digital media, you're doing all these different kinds of things. Your marketing has now worked, right?
Yep.
And now it's like, oh God, now what do I do? When it comes to like the contract negotiation parts of things, I mean, this is something you're obviously an expert in. And I think this can be super intimidating to people sometimes because if you've never done one, I mean, you're like, God, what do I do? So for you, being in the spot that you're in now, I mean, you've kind of touched upon this throughout the interview today, but what is it that got you to the point that you are now? Was it self-taught? Was it mentors? Was it, all of the reading that you do?
Well, luckily, it was law school in the beginning, right? Yeah. And from there, it was mentors and self-taught and continuous trial and error and discussions, and can't change the fact that, an MMA fighter is great. And I like watching MMA because they're learning from being in the ring.
Right.
I mean, I've been in the ring for a lot of years. So when you're in the ring, every new time you get in the ring, you learn something new and go, I didn't see that coming. And even in my world, I haven't seen it coming, but I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. And sometimes I'll run into a contract and I'll say to myself, you know what? I may not be an SE Securities Exchange Commission expert, but I know someone that is. And I'll call one of my friends and say, am I getting this right? Or am I getting it wrong? I give viewpoints. And guess what? I'll pay for it myself. I will get legal bills from other people myself because I want to say, charge me because you gave me this information and I won't make this mistake. And you've saved me potential problems in the future. The big point I'm trying to make you here, you're not going to become an expert in doing contracts. So don't pretend. You need to get an attorney. Okay. The bottom line here is I can't tell you how many times I have people call me up crying in near tears, losing jobs, losing businesses, mortgages, signing personal guarantees on massive properties where they lost their shirts. I mean, I had a very high profile client, former NFL athlete, big promotional guy, worth $150 million at the time, and signed on to a big piece of tract land for tens of millions of dollars. Thought the market was going to be great, and a la 2008 came along. Okay? Yeah. Bankruptcy. Mm-hmm. So I tell people, please look at the finer print. If you're going to go out and do this deal for yourself and you're trying to make a game-changing business decision for yourself or growth model or your business or people are relying upon you, don't risk not spending, a little bit of money on an attorney to look at it and say, am I getting this right? But you have to get the right attorney. I don't want somebody in the doctor's office. I always say this. I don't want someone who's going to do my surgery on my shoulder who's really an expert on knees. Okay. Right. And too many times I look at marketing contracts. I go, who had you sign this contract? Oh, I get to my attorney. Well, he's a general practitioner. I'm like, you didn't understand everything you need to know about products and distribution and digital and everything else that comes along. Milestones. A lot of times people sign away the rights away too quick. Here's everything. Oh, I signed with this group. What are they gonna do? They're gonna do everything for me. And then you look at the agreement and you're like, sign on for 5 years. Is there any way out of it? No, they're just going to do it for me. There's no milestones. It's like you just gave them a piece of your business. If they don't succeed, how are you going to get out of your contract? Like you have to think about things like that. So little tips, right? Because everybody wants to hear some tips.
Right.
If you're going to sign a long-term contract with a group, a person or somebody, make sure there's milestones so you have chances to get out of it if it's not performing well. I need exits. Think about exits. If you got exits, that's great. Sometimes I look at a contract and they go, each party can terminate this agreement upon 30 days written notice. Sometimes it's good for you. Sometimes it's not good for you. But sometimes I look at it and go, you don't have a lot of risk. If it's not going well, you'll just send them a letter and say I'm out. You follow me?
Yeah.
But it could also hurt you on the other side too. My point to you is make sure there's milestones every time in a contract. The most important thing is the term and how the heck do I get out of this thing if this person blows up, dies? I hate to say it, but it's true. Dies. What happens? Is the son or the wife or the grandmother or the fiance representing you or working with you at that point because they own the business? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Make sure to, there's assignment language. It's called an assignment, right? I sign a contract with your company, Jen. I'm signing with you because I think you're great. I'm going to do all my real estate with Jen. You're awesome. Okay. And then you go, I'm out of the business, Steve. I'm selling my company to JT Fox. And I go, well, I didn't do a deal with JT Fox. You go, yeah, but you have an assignment provision in this thing that says that I can assign my agreement and my right to somebody else. So I did. So bye. Now I'm in business with JT Fox. Now I happen to like JT Fox. But if I didn't like JT Fox, I might not be happy, right?
Yeah.
So I can't tell you how many little points in the contract. And let people, this is my favorite line ever, right? Boilerplate. Oh, it's boilerplate. Mm-hmm. What does boilerplate mean? Someone's getting boiled. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
My bottom line here is that that's in there to protect the person that's constructing the contract. That's why they put it in there.
Okay.
Okay. Even like choice of law, little things like that. You live in Minnesota. I live in Chicago. I go, choice of law is Illinois. We have a dispute. And that's boilerplate. You're like, oh, I signed a contract with Steve because it's boilerplate. Well, the implications are you have to come to Illinois. You have to travel to Illinois, hire an attorney in Illinois probably, and have extra expenses that I would have because I'm sitting right here. I'll go down the street and file my case. Like, I know it sounds small because we could go to the bigger provisions, but I gave you two provisions right there, right? Yeah. Assignment, choice of law. Sounds small, sounds boilerplate, but it does affect your life in some way, right? Yeah. Do I want to do, or do I want to do arbitration? So I don't have the big legal fees. I like arbitration a lot. You spend $3,000, you go in here, let an arbitrator decide the case. Because if I'm going to go for it anyway, I think someone's going to be impartial. We'll see. So all these things are so important, but don't stop at the point of the contract and saying that's where I'm going to get cheap. You got to conclude it. You got to finish. Finishing is having the agreement. You could say I'm protected. That's the most important thing.
Okay. So on terms of protection, and this kind of piggybacks on that, is that I think, once maybe you've established your brand, your credibility, all that stuff, and now you want to start maybe adding some things into the business that you do. Yes. Let's say it doesn't go well.
Our wings. Yes.
Right? But let's say it doesn't go well, yes. Right? Like Amazon Fire Phone, right?
Or what's not going well for you? Just for our case scenario here, is my core business not going well, and so I'm spreading it out, or I'm spreading my wings, and the spreading of the wings and new businesses aren't going right?
Well, maybe the new businesses aren't going right? Okay. Like they're just not. It's just been maybe mistake after mistake after mistake, and it starts to kind of hurt you. So, like, how do you separate yourself from like that bad idea or bad business venture to protect like your brand?
The old phrase, "Get back to basics."
Yeah.
Get back to your fundamentals. Get back to your fundamentals.
Okay.
Don't keep fighting a dead horse. I mean, you can't keep fighting a dead end proposition sometimes. You're just so in love with something. You keep going and you keep putting money in it. I had a guy come to me, and I get pitched all kinds of deals, literally globally. And I had a guy come to me, and he's like, they put $3 million into an exercise fitness equipment system. Yeah. A very good reputation, very good businessman, very good. And they're just so fixated on it. It just wasn't working and resonating. They weren't really buying into it. And so he kept trying to raise money, trying to manipulate. And before you know it, they're $4, $5, $6 million their own money into it. Now they're looking to raise money.
Yeah.
Who's going to put money in a business like that died, right? Sometimes you got to say, look, it's not working. Move on. You have got, just because you told your family about it and your relatives, it's a certain amount of humbleness you have to kind of have in yourself. Because it could be embarrassing sometimes, and people feel like they're so committed that they keep going. They know it's not working, so either you got to figure out a way quickly to get an expert to help you turn this thing around, or you got to get real and say, I got to stop and move on to another project. I see too many people putting too much effort into stuff that's not worked, that's ruining their life, that they're losing money with, and bringing everything about them down, including, a family or going and buying a house and things like that, to really impact that, right? I had the conversation. I just told you two examples. One guy with the real estate and this other company in the fitness space. And they go, come try the equipment. It's great. And I love a fitness nut, right? So I tried it, and you know what? It just wasn't exciting. It was just missing that it factor. Like, but don't you see it works great because you're jogging at the same time as you're doing all this stuff? I'm like, but no, it's just too complicated. We talk about keep it simple.
Yeah.
We're just trying to be an end all be all to everything. And then before you know it, they kept going and going and going, to the point where the guy had to sell his house, put all his money into it, and it's like, for what? Mm-hmm. What point are you trying? What's really the point you're trying to make at that point? So anyway, you got to know when to quit. You got to know when to quit or pivot. Knowing how to pivot and having honestly the tenacity to get up and go again. Right? It's easy to get beaten down. Have the tenacity to look up there and say, you know what? We're all going to lose in some of the games we're playing. It's okay. I
Mhm.
mean, Michael Jordan was the best basketball player of all time. I'm from Chicago, so we just talked about that. Yet he was this close to losing these championships a lot of times because they were very close. You know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
In other words, even when he won a championship, he lost. They won 4 games and they lost 3. They didn't win all of them. And when I talk about life, my point is that he also had losses in his big win. The ultimate thing is to win the overall game, okay?
Right.
And having those big wins. And I talk about this. Our lives, we're like a pinball machine. You're not going to be that ball going through the whole thing and never get knocked by anything. You're going to get knocked around a little bit. Get used to it. Get up and go again.
Okay. So, I mean, kind of on that too, do you feel like there's been maybe some impactful, not to put you on the spot here, but like mistakes or business ventures or things like that that you've had to learn from too? And have they made you make better in your business? What do you think about that for you in terms of what's happened in your career?
You know what? It's funny. I'm never going to tell anybody at all, okay, that I haven't had mistakes, because I've had them. I've learned from what I think my mistakes are, because I kind of replay them in my brain a lot so I don't run into them again.
Yeah.
I look for signals and signs to say this kind of reminds me of the situation I was in before, and I'm not going there. And you know what? You just got to learn and get up and go.
Yeah.
Have I made some bad investments? Yeah, I've made some bad investments and stuff. That some stuff was great, mostly earlier in my career. I'm a little more cautious now.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've invested in Bitcoin right now when it was like, $3,000 a coin, and now it's 18,000. So I feel good about that. By
Yeah.
same token, I've invested in another cryptocurrency coin. But I've also made sure, this is important, that what I was doing and experimenting in those sections, it wasn't affecting my core life though. You follow me?
Yeah.
So, you got to try and minimize that. I would never, and I advise people, don't go out there and think that this thing is so great. It's going to change your life and your existence and everything. Put everything into it and lose it, like my friend who was the former player who lost, $100 million in a real estate transaction. Just don't think if it's too good to be true, be very cautious about it. But yes, I've made mistakes. Luckily, I've not made mistakes in my real estate portfolio because I've had a different mentality. And I've talked about this a lot on JT Fox's events.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that here. My mindset was never about how much equity I was building my real estate projects. It was really about cash flow. Okay. I've always bought property, not to flip, but to hold, and also to have that cash flow for a period of time, because the period of time is, how long, Jen? Forever. When you finally pay off a property with a mortgage, guess what happens after the mortgage is paid off? Forever.
Returns.
And then if you've got kids, they're forever. So luckily, I've always looked at properties that could put out really good cash flow. Once they're paid off, even more cash flow. It's always been my model. And I've been doing a lot more flips now than before because I actually enjoy them a lot.
Yeah.
But my foundation, and getting back to my basics, if you said, Steve, your flips sucked, you didn't make any money, and blah, 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 what am I going to do? I'm going to go back to my foundation. You know what? I'm just going to go back. I'm going to buy my properties, rent them out, make my positive cash flow, and keep compounding and scaling that business. But I'm very choosy on my flips. I'm very choosy. I talk to JT a lot about flips because certain things sound great. They came to me with a flip that was actually in a certain area, and I said, guys, I just don't see the area as a great flip.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? I'm like, well, it's on a major highway. It's next to gas stations. It's next to this, next to that. I mean, and I said, that doesn't mean it may not be great for you guys. I'm just saying I'd rather take a cautious route because I just don't know. Right? So
yeah, absolutely.
I think you really got to know, especially in real estate, you get sucked in really quick. And there's so many things that could go wrong with real estate. If you're doing new construction, it takes that little bit of a problem to have a foundation problem or a crack, or built it wrong, or leveled wrong, or something, or you increase the prices, or your your construction company left. Some of these guys aren't necessarily reliable over time. I've seen all those things in my own world, right? I had certain budgets, and the guy goes, I just don't have the time, Steve. I got to go do something else. I'm like, what am I going to do? You're losing time, energy, and money, right? So you have to deal with that. But have the confidence in yourself, always, no matter what, that it can always work out, okay?
Yeah. So last question here, because we're actually at about the end of our time.
Okay.
What are some parting words of advice for people, what they could be doing right now when things are a little bit quieter in terms of real estate to really start, I guess, building themselves up for, when the floodgates open in terms of their brand or their marketing?
I think the floodgates, okay, well, first off, let's talk about real estate. In the real estate world, I think that actually when it quiets down is when it's active for me.
Mm-hmm.
I actually buy most of my properties in the winter because everyone's home freezing their butts off. I usually buy cars in the winter too. One year I came home with a Range Rover for my wife who had 2 foot of snow on the car. I was the only one in the lot to buy it. Take this thing. Yeah, I was negotiating like crazy. You know, no one else was in there. It was crickets. Okay, or actually it was winter, so no crickets even there too. But I'll never forget that. Like literally bought a Range Rover because it was outside and it had like 2 feet of snow, and like couldn't see the car. It was all white. I'm like, I got a great deal on it. My point is that when it's quiet, that's the time to strike because other people aren't actively competing against you for properties and opportunities out there right now. And let this time and this plan right now between now and the new year, when everybody's kind of doing the holiday stuff, to reshape your brand. This is the time to do it. So you hit the beach running come January 1st.
Yep.
But don't take the time off between now and the next 7 weeks and say, oh, I'll deal with it in January, because everyone's dealing with it in January. You have to go out there and you have to be Mike Tyson ready for your fight, who's fighting up here in 2 weeks. I love boxing. I'm saying it for a reason. And that is, I need to train for the next 8 weeks because I'm fighting in January. And that's how you got to take the same mentality. Okay. There's a lot of sports acronyms here because I live in sports as well too. But the truth is, it's preparation.
Yes.
So this doesn't matter. I'm not going to get in a ring in January unless I'm preparing for it for the previous 8 weeks. So on your branding side, get your brand together, build a website for yourself. They've got all kinds of people out there, even interns and people like that can build websites for nothing, even if you don't know how to do that. Start shaping your brand. And sometimes, I really believe this now, and these are my parting words, really. You've got to lay it out in front of you on a whiteboard or on paper or in the computer or the graphic designer or something so you can see what your world looks like. Okay? I need to see the menu of items that are going to make me successful. I just can't jawbone it here all the time, and neither can you. Once you start laying it out, you go, that's not going to work because you see it in front of you. Gosh, I didn't see that. That's why a whiteboard is great. I tell people, go out and get a dry erase board, go with it, say, this is where I want to go. No. And that's why a lot of times when I counsel people and I'm also coaching, I have a big dry erase board in my office, and I go in there and I'm erasing. I go, and here's your world. And I go, can I take a photo of that? I go, go for it. And they do. And they go, wow, because I see their world. You have to see your world. And if you don't see it, you have to talk to people around you, your husband, your wife, a friend. You see this, right? And like, am I seeing it right? You have to be humble. Don't go in there and say, I do see it right, and this is it. Go in there, I think I see it right, but just in case, what do you think? And I always get opinions going, I think you're right, but this is one area you're missing. You should build up more on X. And I go, God, you know what? Thank you. Because I'm humble. I'm not a know-it-all. I mean, you know what? I want to be a sponge. So always, bounce it off of somebody. Somebody, even if it's not an expert, which I prefer. But if it's not an expert, it could be your mom. I mean, my mom's 82 years old. I'm like, Mom, what do you think about this? And she goes, let me tell you what I think, with no filters, right? She'll tell me whatever she thinks. And I go, you're right. So as crazy as it sounds, a business thing. My mom's like, no, my dad's given me certain principles my whole life in terms of negotiating and things to do. My grandfather, actually, one of my favorite lines in my whole life, and I'll use it here right now.
Yeah.
My grandfather, I don't know if you know the word, it's kind of a derogatory word, but I'm going to say it, and I think I'm okay saying here. Signing as a personal guarantor for somebody else is really not something you want to find yourself doing in life, right? We talked about personal guarantees, but sometimes people say, well, you come and sign as a personal guarantor for me for a car or this or that. And my grandfather had an old saying, and I swear to God, he's been dead for 20 years. And he was 90 when he said, he goes, I'll never be a schmuck with a pen. Okay. And I'll never forget that statement to me because it was an old time way of saying it, right? Doesn't resonate with current thinking.
Sure.
I'll tell you something. Every time I got a pen, I'm thinking about that statement. What am I signing? He goes, I'll never sign for somebody else because it's going to come back and haunt you. My point is certain things that just stuck with your mindset.
Yeah.
And so taking things from when I grew up really helped me, actually. Things I saw my family go into, extended family, things that went well for people, things that went really bad for people, and I realized what I wanted to shape for myself. Draw into all of your life experiences because that's what makes you great. That's what's going to make you unique. Your life experiences are a lot different than mine. We could share some. We could have commonality. I had one of my favorite clients and a very, very high profile person in sports, a manager, and somebody says, well, we're feeling. We're going through the same thing. He goes, no, you really don't know what I'm thinking because we're not really going through the same thing. We can't have the exact same life experiences from this. So we take our own and draw upon our own life experiences to help us get to that point. But never lose faith in who you are, number one, okay? And number two, never quit. And number three, don't ever be so stubborn that you can't change a path. You've got to learn how to pivot in life. If you can't pivot and cope, you're really going to struggle. You got to cope with loss, and then you got to pivot.
There you guys have it. Steve Mandell, thank you so much. This was very eye-opening. I know for me, I'm sure it was for everybody watching this. I thank you so much for taking the time, and I'm sure I'll see you soon.
You're awesome. Thanks so much. Take care and good luck.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Happy Thanksgiving.